Welcome again to Ancient Tales for today. Now, the last time we talked about understanding cows. Understanding cows sounds like a strange thing. We talked about two dreams and how Joseph explained the dreams, that there would be good years and bad years. There would be plenty of food, followed by no food, famine. We're talking about good and bad. So now we come to lesson number 34, from rags to riches. From rags to riches. And so you'll want to stay by because another interesting story from the ancient tales.
Number 34, From Rags to Riches. Or maybe the title should be From Riches to Rags and Back to Riches. Joseph had been born into a family that, while not very rich, certainly had enough. After all, his father had given him a very beautiful and expensive coat. Of course, that rich coat had been turned into rags by his brothers and stained with goat's blood to make it look as if he had been killed by some wild animal. Then Joseph had been sold into slavery. How much worse could it get? Well, then he had been falsely imprisoned. He'd spent years in jail for something he didn't do. What a terrible situation. But even there, he didn't let it get him down. He impressed the jailer, who put him in charge of the other prisoners. When he had the opportunity to help others, Joseph did just that. He explained the dreams that the king's wine server and the king's chief baker had. Even the help that Joseph gave to the king's wine server was quickly forgotten, and Joseph spent another 2 years in jail. But one day the call came from the king. After he explained the king's dream, the king decided he was the wisest person to put in charge of his kingdom, to use the time of plenty well so that they could prepare for the time of famine. Joseph was made second in command of all Egypt. What an amazing change, to be taken from prison and made second to the king. Why? Because Joseph trusted God, did his work wisely and well, proving he was honest and could be trusted. There's a lesson in this for all of us to learn from Joseph's example. However bad the circumstances, we don't give up. We do our best and trust in heaven to guide us, following the good path. It would have been easy for Joseph to have become depressed. But he kept his confidence and trusted in his God.
Okay, from rags to riches. Again, this is number 34. Now, it's very interesting that we have from rags to riches, because this is a very common saying in the United States and English-speaking areas. Okay, what is a rag? Well, the rag is mabu, okay? And riches, of course, is 发财. So now the question is, what does from rags to riches mean? Well, it means that 从乞丐变为有钱有财富的人. Okay? So there you have it. Or, as the first sentence here says, or maybe the title should be From Riches to Rags and Back to Riches. Now, you remember, this is going to be going back in the story. He was rich to start with, rich kid, I guess you could say. And then he ended up in jail, and then now back to riches. That's the name of the story, but we've got to go through the story. Do we need this rag? Nah, we don't need this rag. We'll just toss it off the set. And Joseph had been born into a family that, while not very rich, certainly had enough. Okay? Joseph, born into a family, that means Joseph's family, his mother and his father. The next part says, while not very rich, 并不是说他是非常非常有钱, but it says they certainly had enough. That 他们含有的是足够的. Not bad. I think in those days, he would be considered fairly well-to-do, 相当有钱. Okay. After all, 事实上, okay, after all, 事实上, his father had given him a very beautiful and expensive coat. When we say very beautiful and expensive coat, 它的外衣, in fact, it was called a coat of many colors. Coat of many colors, okay? Going on. Of course, that rich coat, so it was an expensive coat. By the way, the other brothers didn't get that. Remember? Only Joseph got the coat, the rich coat. They go,外衣. Only he had that. Had been turned to rags by his brothers. So what did they do? They actually took Joseph's clothes and 用羊的血, 羊血, 就污秽他们, stained with goat's blood. 为了要怎么样呢? To make it look like he had been killed by some wild animal. 为了要假装看好像他是被野兽杀死了. Okay? Then Joseph had been sold into slavery. 卖给埃及人做奴隶. Okay? Sold into slavery. How much worse could it get? 真的会变得更加糟糕吗? Well, yeah. Remember what it says here? Then he had been falsely imprisoned. You remember? 做了越狱. That means that 是无辜的放在这个监牢. He, for the wrong reason, okay? I mean, he was, how can you say, he was very innocent, 无罪, innocent, okay? He spent years in jail. More than 1 year, several years in jail, 坐牢, for something he didn't do. 为了他所做的，人家控告他所做他没有，根本就没做的事。Okay, what a terrible situation, 非常非常糟糕的一个境况。What a terrible, terrible situation. So, what's next? But even there, 连在这么糟糕的境况之下, he didn't let it get him down. Now, if I say to you, well, today I feel a little down, that means 我的情绪不好. Okay? Now, if it says here, he didn't let it get him down, what does that mean? It means that he didn't allow it to affect his 情绪. Okay? Well, okay. He impressed the jailer who put him in charge of the other prisoners. Now that's pretty good, isn't it? He 动了那个管监牢的. And the jailer, the person who's running the jail, lets Joseph, who is a prisoner, 他自己也是罪犯. Okay? Okay? To be in charge of, 叫负责, to be in charge of the other prisoners, 其他的罪犯. So, wherever Joseph goes, he somehow, something good, eventually, 终于会发生一些好事情. Now let's go on to the next. When he had an opportunity to help others, 当他有机会to help others, 帮忙别人, he did just that. Joseph did just that. Joseph 就是那样做，就帮助别人. He explained the dreams of the king's wine server and the king's chief baker. 你记得he explained 这些 wine server and king's chief baker 他们做梦，那么 Joseph 就解梦. Wow, what an interesting story. Stay by for some more. Now we are going to look at some light on our path. We're going to look at Luke 16:10.
路加福音16章第10节.
Here's what it says. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with very much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will be dishonest with much.
圣经说，人在最小的事上忠心，在大事上也忠心，在最小的事上不义，在大事上也不义。
Okay, now the question I have is simply this. How do you become an honest person?
这个是不简单。我想可能是真的是，要在很小的事上注意自己，从小事习惯上面。我想，举个例子，我教我的孩子嘛，我就跟他说，你要在小的时候就学习，要求自己忠心，诚实。如果你小的时候不诚实，你不可能到长大以后突然之间诚实的，这是不可能的。
Right. And the Bible text actually says, if you are dishonest, 你不诚实，在小事情上，
在大事上也不会诚实了。
Yes, yes. So it is very important to begin to grow and actually make it a habit.
变成一个你的习惯。
Yes, exactly.
所以艾老师，我在想问您，有很多人呐，从不同的家庭里面出来，是不是？有的同样是一家的兄弟姐妹，可是有的就是很老实，有的就是很狡猾，那怎么样解释啊？
Whoa, that's a hard one. I know. In my own family, it's a little bit like that.
Really?
Yeah. So I said, I have no idea, except everybody has the opportunity to make a choice.
对。
And that's very much. Hey, we've run out of time, but thanks for joining us for Light on Your Path. And as we discovered the last time, even with the help of Joseph, the king's wine server was quickly forgotten. He forgot all the good things that Joseph did. He explained the dream, and it came true. 就按照他所说的就应验了, and the wine server forgot. And so here is Joseph just sitting in the jails. And he spent 再花了 2 years in jail. But one day, 但有一天呢, the call came from the king. 这个王就叫他来. Going on. Sorry about that. Let's go back. After he explained the king's dream, of course, explaining the king's dream, of course, that's the reason. Remember, the wise man, 他的顾问没办法. So think of it this way. Here is a prisoner. He came out of the jail, 从监牢出来, and he is smarter than the king's wise men, 比那些顾问还要聪明. Okay? After he explained the king's dream, the king decided he was the wisest person to put in charge of his kingdom. Okay, the king decided he was the wisest, but 最聪明的人 to put in charge of his kingdom. 就负责管理他的王国，他的国家. Wow. So this is for sure from rags to riches. I mean, here he is a prisoner. Okay, moving on. Yes, to use the time of plenty well so that they could prepare for a time of famine. They needed to use the bad times, the good times, to prepare for the bad times. You can understand how that is. We all put money, what? In a bank. Why do we put money in the bank? So when an emergency comes, we will have extra money. Now, here's the interesting thing. Joseph was made second in command of all Egypt. Do you know what that means? It simply means that 除了王以外, Joseph is, we could say, 老二. He is the second most powerful person in all of Egypt, even more powerful than the wise men. What an amazing change! 多么奇妙的变化! What an amazing change! To be taken from prison, 从监牢, and 带到王宫, and to be made the second to the king. That means that except for the king, Joseph now is the most important person in the whole country. Now, you can see why the title From Rags to Riches is so appropriate, 非常妥当, because he was very poor, he was in jail, and then he becomes very rich, and he is right in the palace of the king. Okay, now the question is asked, why? And here is, I think, in my estimation, my personal feeling, because Joseph trusted God. 因为约瑟信任神，信任上帝. Because Joseph trusted God, He did his work wisely and well, of course. He was very wise, and he did his work very well. 他好好工作，做得很彻底。Okay? And he was proving. What does it mean to prove? 证明他是 honest and could be trusted. You know what? If we want to have people trust us, 要人家信任我们 we must prove, 我们要证明 Well, how do you prove that you're honest and be trusted? 当然是我们的行为，我们的 behavior. Behavior is most important. We demonstrate, okay? We show that we can be trusted. Going on. Let's go on. There's a lesson for all of us to learn from Joseph's example. Joseph has a good example, okay? 非常好的榜样。However bad the circumstances, 情况就算是坏到什么地步 we don't give up. 不要放弃。Don't let it get us down. Remember earlier in the lesson, we don't let it get us down. We do our best and trust heaven. 就依靠天国，那就是神 to guide us, following the good path. 要跟从好的路。It would have been easy for Joseph to become depressed. Of course, it 肯定是很容易，这个约瑟经过这么坏的事情，他就变成很 depressed, very depressed, 非常沮丧。But he wasn't. But he wasn't. That's incredible. He kept his confidence and trusted in God. What does it mean to be confident? That means to believe that something is true. He believed, and it says here, he trusted his God. Now, I believe that the important point here is that if you trust God, then it helps you get over the bad things that happen to us. And with that, we'll be back in a few minutes. Now, let's take a look at some words you need to know.
好
Okay, terrible situation.
就是很糟糕的情况之下。
Okay, terrible situation. And from rags to riches, very commonly said that that's the title. 这个
对对对，这个 title 是很有意思的，它是一本书的名字，是不是？乞丐王子。
Okay. Well, almost. 乞丐到王子。
从乞丐到王子。
Yeah.
可是 Joseph 的情况有点不一样，是不是？您跟我说
刚好相反，他是好的，然后呢不好，又升到高。
他就是很富有，变成乞丐，又变成一个很有权力的人。
Yes. So he's from rags to riches to rags to riches. I mean, 有高有低，有高有低。
对。
But that's the way life is sometimes. Okay, the last one, just one more. Okay, to prove something is
证明。
证明, that's right. Thanks for looking at these words you need to know. Okay, Now we're going to wrap it all up right here. We've been on number 34, from rags to riches, from being very poor to becoming very rich. You remember the story, we reviewed again the story of how he was falsely accused, 做艳遇, okay? And he took the opportunity, and many different places he became very successful. Even in the jail, he was put in charge. And it proved that he was a pretty special person. And the king thought so too. And he became very important. Now, the next one, 35, 说谎的后果. See you then.
That's all for today, and thanks for watching. If you like Ancient Tales for Today, please visit atft.chinesehope.tv. You may also contact us by writing to ancienttalesfortoday@gmail.com. Again, that's ancienttalesfortoday@gmail.com. Tell your friends about Ancient Tales for Today. See you next time.